You're listening to the Guard Shack podcast, a podcast revolving around the private security industry and dedicated to the professional improvement of it and its personnel. My name is Robbie Weidman, and with nearly 20 years in the business, I wanted to share my knowledge and opinions with those who want to learn more about private security as well as develop themselves professionally. In this episode, we're going to discuss some basic officer safety concerns that you may or may not have thought about. But first, we're going to talk about some tragic news coming out of Flint, Michigan right after this. I'm going to open the day with the unfortunate and tragic news out of Flint, Michigan, where a security officer was murdered in the line of duty. Just before recording this tonight, I decided to look up and see if there's been any developments in the investigation, and I'm happy to report that the two outstanding suspects, including the one who pulled the trigger, have been arrested. So there will be no mentions of the names of the suspects. Let's talk about the incident. Security guard Calvin Munderland was shot and killed on Friday, May 1st at a Family Dollar in Flint, Michigan. The attack occurred after an incident in which Officer Munderland had confronted a customer at the store about not wearing a face mask, which the store required customers to wear. Apparently, the customer did not like this and got into it with Officer Munderland, who then told her to leave and instructed a cashier not to serve the person. Apparently, this fine example of a human being was offended by this and took it upon themselves to show that to Officer Munderland by yelling at him and spitting on him. In fact, this same person was still so offended after this that she later returned to the store about 20 minutes afterwards with her husband and her son to apparently murder Officer Munderland for simply doing his job. A confrontation occurred, and the original subject's son drew a firearm and shot Officer Munderland in the back of the head. It is said that Officer Munderland later died at the hospital. All three of those initial suspects are being charged with premeditated murder and firearms charges. The original suspect, who refused to wear a face mask, has been arrested. Later, a fourth suspect, who's the sister of the person who pulled the trigger on the guard, was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence, lying to the police, and also as an accessory after the fact. This was a senseless, premeditated attack. From what I've read, Officer Munderland was a father to 9 children. That's 9 kids without a father and a wife without her husband. Officer Munderland's life mattered, and now because someone didn't want to cover their face amid this pandemic, his life is no more. And while I understand a lot of people disagree with the shelter-in-place orders that are going around this nation, the stay-at-home order, wear a mask order, whatever you want to call it, there's no need to end someone's life over the requirement to wear a mask if you want to shop at a private business. If you don't want to wear a mask, shop somewhere that doesn't require it. Let us not forget Officer Munderland, as well as all the other security workers who have been killed in the line of duty. As of yesterday, the 2 outstanding suspects sought in connection with the fatal shooting were arrested by police. The primary suspect himself, who is responsible for the murder of Officer Munderland, was apprehended in Bay City, Michigan, about 50 miles north of Flint. Apparently, his father, who was also sought in connection with the premeditated murder, was arrested in Houston, and he will be extradited to Michigan. Apparently, 2 more Flint residents were charged with obstruction of justice, harboring a felon, and related charges for the roles in getting the stepfather to Houston. Apparently, they rented a vehicle, drove him down there, and helped them get clothing while they were on site, and even rented a hotel room for him. It's always unfortunate when we lose one of our own, especially in such a senseless act such as that. Moving on, let's talk about some officer safety stuff. The first thing we're going to talk about is situational awareness. First of all, you definitely need to know your surroundings. You need to know the lay of your land, so to speak. Become familiar with your work sites. Know where the alcoves are where people can hide from you. Additionally, you need to pay attention to those around you. You never know when somebody's going to try to ambush you or, so to speak, get back at you just because you're wearing a badge and you happen to look like somebody that gave them a hard time at one point. Also, be mindful and look for the non-obvious hazards such as construction equipment, low-hanging things you can hit your head on, because I've got a big head and I've done that plenty of times. It's not fun. Another thing you might have to keep an eye out for is downed electrical wires, especially if you're working at a construction site or somewhere where that might be prone to happen. Always treat a downed wire as live unless it's disconnected from the power source. Now let's talk about officer safety at nighttime. One of the biggest things I recommend in the first piece of equipment any officer should be buying is a good quality, rechargeable Streamlight Stinger. It's rechargeable, it's a good weight, and it fits my hands and it fits my belt. Now there are advantages to having a larger flashlight. Take for instance a 4D cell mag light from back in the day. You could put the hurting down on somebody with that if you need to, although it's not advised because it's not a weapon you're technically trained in. A smaller sized flashlight, or I should say mid-sized, fits on your belt, fits comfortably in your hands, And again, rechargeable is the way to go. When it comes to flashlights, spend the money on it. Good rechargeable Streamlight Stinger, it's probably going to run you about $120 something on Amazon. Again, check your corners and alcoves. Not to say somebody's going to be waiting to ambush you, but they might be. Or somebody just might be hanging out there sleeping and you need to clear them off your sight. Be mindful of nocturnal animals such as skunks and bats and anything else that's creepy crawly and might be hanging out at night. You don't want to go home smelling like that. Now let's talk a little bit about suspicious persons. Thing that you need to watch the most, the very most important part of somebody's body when you're contacting is their hands. The hands will kill you. Always watch your hands. You can see if they're going to be reaching for something or if they're got something in their hands too. One thing you need to be mindful of when you're contacting people, especially if they're suspicious and not supposed to be on site, is why are they there? Are they there to steal something? Are they actually lost? Heck, are they setting up an ambush? And I know I use the term ambush a lot, and it sounds probably a little bit paranoid to some, but I have worked and currently work in a kind of rough area, and you never know what these people are going to be up to. At one point, when I was working in agricultural security, we had suspects setting up railroad spikes in the mud where we would drive through trying to pop our tires. Luckily, I never ran them over, but some of the farm workers did. So as ineffective as it sounds, it would work. It popped their tires. Another thing to be mindful of when you're contacting people is, are they alone? Are they truly alone? I mean, are they the distraction and somebody else is stealing stuff behind your back, or are they distracting you so somebody can sneak up behind you and put a hurting on you? When you talk to them, you need to think about the story they're giving you as to why they're on your property. Does it make sense? Usually, with a couple extra questions, you can find out if somebody's lying. If they're lying, generally, their story's going to change. Especially the more you question them, a lot of these people get nervous and slip up. Speaking of ambushes, how often do you check the area where you parked for people just hanging out there? Do you go to or from your office for equipment or vehicles? If you're doing so, you need to pay attention to see if there's any unauthorized persons in the area. Now, again, it might sound paranoid to you, but in this line of work, especially if you work in a place as active as I do, you're eventually going to make enemies and make people angry. And if you work for a place kind of like I do, where you have a large fleet of marked vehicles out in front of your building, you're pretty easy to find. The last thing you need is somebody attacking you at your own place of work. Something else to think about is, how do you know somebody's supposed to be there or not? Are they a client? Are they an actual employee? Are they somebody that says they're an employee but you can't prove it? These are all things you need to keep in the back of your head all the time. Additionally, how often do you check the back seat of your personal vehicle before you get in and drive off? Sounds like something out of a movie, but it takes a split second to check, especially if you have a nice, rechargeable flashlight on your belt. You can shine that through your window and check before you even get into the car. Again, a lot of this is sounding kind of extreme, but my point is you shouldn't let your guard down just because you're at work. You never know. Again, we're focusing on the worst what ifs possible. Moving on, let's talk about contacting people in part 5. Now, I'm sure you've seen it 1,000 times, and if you haven't, well, I'm going to describe it to you, and that's called your bladed stance. Okay, that's an appropriate interview stance. For me being left-handed, my left leg is to the back, my right leg is to the front. I'm balanced primarily with most of my weight to the front, so it's harder to push me off balance. Also, since I'm armed, my firearm is away from any suspects. And that's the way you should stand. So if you're right-handed, you're going to stand with your right hip towards the back. You're going to be slightly angled. Another thing about this is if somebody is shooting at you, you present a smaller target sideways than you do head-on, face-on. And again, it comes down to balance. If you're standing square with somebody, let's say feet shoulder width apart, they could push you and you'll just fall on your back pretty much without any effort. Versus if you have a leg back and a leg forward and you're putting most of your weight forward. Now let's talk about, in the same aspect of contacting people, the demeanor you present. You want to present a professional yet firm and fair demeanor. You don't have to be all kind of gentle or anything like that. But you can talk nice and firm and still say stuff like, "Sir, I need you to get your stuff and move along." You don't have to be, "Please, could you grab your stuff and would you mind moving along, please?" Now, it might seem ridiculous, but a lot of it is your confidence and your command presence when you're talking to the public. Again, there's a big difference between being respectful versus polite and versus too nice. You can still be polite and respectful. While a lot of our jobs do revolve around customer service, a lot of the people that we're contacting aren't our customers. They're the people the customers hired us to keep away. Now we're going to talk a little bit about command presence. A lot of dealing with aggressive subjects is command presence. How you come across, as in authoritative versus weak, or confident versus arrogant, which there is a fine line between those two. have a lot to deal with how people are going to treat you or react to you. Also, you need to be dressed and pressed. And what I mean by that, your shirt needs to be tucked in. Your pants and shirt also need to be without wrinkles. Your shoes should not seem like you polished them. And by shoes, I mean boots. Should not appear as if you polished them with a melted Hershey's bar. Everything should be in tip-top shape. Your gear needs to be worn appropriately. You are not some tactical operator. If you have a firearm, you wear that on your hip where it goes, or in drop leg holster if you're somebody that can do that. I personally cannot wear a drop leg holster. It just bangs up against doors, getting in and out of the car and all that. You need to keep your duty belt gear also in good shape. So if you're wearing leather or let's say like Bianchi Akimold Elite basket weave looking stuff, if it gets tore up, you need to replace it. Same with your boots too. You shouldn't have your soles flopping around looking like they're about to sing a song on some old Disney cartoon. In essence, you don't want to be looking like a soggy soup sandwich. Nobody wants that. Nobody's going to order it from Subway. It's just not a good appearance for you, for your company, or for the industry overall. Now, and I can't believe I have to say this, let's talk about good hygiene. Again, I can't believe I have to say this, but you need to bathe on the rigs. And what I mean by that is daily. You don't want to be smelling on the job, and it can also lead to other health issues. Let's talk a little bit about shaving while we're at it. You don't necessarily have to be clean shaven, and that's also dependent upon your company's policy, but you don't need to go around looking all patchy and shaggy, especially since you're not ZZ Top, nor are you a Tier 1 operator. Now, you also need to have an appropriate haircut. Not saying you have to be high and tight or anything, but the less hair you have, the less the suspect can grab in a fight. Your hair shouldn't really go past your collar while seated, and it shouldn't ever go over your ears while you're on duty. Whatever you want to do off duty, that's up to you. It helps with your appearance, and it's also an officer safety thing when it comes to long hair and long facial hair. And again, the hair thing applies to both males and females. Even females shouldn't wear their hair down in the field. There's a lot more to grab, like I've been saying, and it can get caught in machinery or what have you, and you don't want to have your head or your hair ripped off. Now let's talk a little bit about speaking well, which apparently when I'm recording this podcast is something I'm not very good at, as I'm sure you could hear. Whatever you do, there's no need to swear at anybody you're talking. I get it that sometimes you get carried away or you get caught up in the moment. Be professional while you're speaking. Don't try to use big words just because you know what they are. And especially don't do that if you don't know what they mean. Be appropriate for your situation, and by that, I mean don't vent about your work or your bosses or your supervisors. Don't speak about confidential matters where somebody could hear you. That's especially important for those in management. Of course, and obvious, again, I can't believe I have to say this, but don't make derogatory remarks. Don't provoke incidents either. Don't go picking and prodding and poking at somebody just trying to get them to fight with. In fact, what you should be trying to do is utilizing verbal judo. And what I mean by that is you need to use talking to de-escalate the situation. You can calm down a situation sometimes by talking. In fact, that's how I got out of so many fights over my career. And now let's talk more about wearing your gear appropriately. Again, this isn't the Wild West, so there's no need to cross-draw, especially your firearm. If you wear an external carrier or some kind of tactical vest, don't keep your primary firearm up there. Your gun goes on the side that you shoot with on your hip, or in a drop leg holster if that's approved by your company. Now, as a personal preference, you should use a level 3 holster if you're on duty, or at least a level 2 for the retention. You're not better at restraining your weapon than the mechanical safety features of a quality holster. And in case you are better than those, remember, no, you are not better than those safeties. You should make a habit of drawing and deploying your taser with your weak hand. This helps you to avoid confusion as to whether you have your taser or your firearm or not. And I personally don't use a cross draw when it comes to my taser, but with the taser you are indeed less likely to permanently damage yourself with an accidental discharge. Make sure you situate your belt for you. It's basically a user preference thing, except when it comes to gun placement, that generally belongs in one of two places. And where is that? Your hip or in a drop leg. As a general rule, I always say buy nice or buy twice. You should really only ever buy and use good quality gear. You don't want to go to draw your gun and accidentally rip off your entire holster. Again, you can also look very professional with high quality gear. And now I'm not saying to go out and buy handcrafted leather. There's plenty of other options. And if you wear nylon, that's fine. There's plenty of options out there. Just make sure it's a high quality manufacturer like Bianchi or something like that. I believe even Safe Life Defense has a pretty awesome belt out there. Now, nylon's fine. I'm not saying it's not. But I personally find the basket weave look to be more professional. maybe not more professional, but in my opinion, it looks better. And again, that's just my opinion, guys. Don't freak out on me, please. I currently wear and prefer the nylon basket weave look. So what it is, it's by Bianchi. It's the AccuMold Elite, and it's made to look just like leather for the public's viewing purpose, I guess is how you could put that. It looks just like some of the old school leather gear I used to have, and it's super light compared to leather, which is good because when you get up there in the years like I am, your back starts hurting, especially just from wearing that stuff on your hips. Okay, for our last section on officer safety, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about body armor and the options and whether you should or should not wear it. And first of all, yes, you should wear it. I know it's very expensive, but how much is your life worth? There are quite a few options out there. I'm sure you can wear concealed, but personally I vote on the external carriers. They're much more comfortable. You can swap out those carriers for different types. The uniform look, you can have that full tactical Molly style. You can have the half Molly, half uniform look. And you can also swap out panels into a concealment carrier too. I wore the Blower Armor Skin carrier for a while, for about 3.5, 4 years until it gave out, and that was just splendid. And that is, I can't tell you how nice it is to go back to the office, pop your vest off, the right reports. NIJ, or the National Institute of Justice, provides threat level ratings for body armor performance standards. You can always visit nij.ojp.gov and poke around there for more details on this, though. The lower rating of NIJ 2A is the lowest ballistic rating, and it might stop a 9mm or a 40 cal if you're lucky that day, but it definitely won't stop a rifle round. And then there's NIJ 2, which is rated to stop a 9mm or a 357 on a pretty good day, but again, it won't stop a rifle round either. The next step up is the NIJ 3A, which is tested to stop a 357 SIG and a 44 Magnum handgun round fired from a longer barreled handgun. However, this still will not stop rifle rounds. I mean, it might, but this isn't something to play around with. NIJ Level 3 has been tested to stop a 7.64mm full metal jacket lead core rifle round. But still, try not to get shot, especially with a rifle. If you survive, you're definitely going to be feeling it. They also have NIJ Level 4, which has been tested to stop a 30 cal steel core armor piercing rifle round, and these usually come in the form of steel plates. One of the better options out there, in my opinion, right now is Safe Life Defense. Again, I'm going to make the recommendation for them, but I do want everyone to know I am not sponsored by that company at all. But Safe Life Defense, if you're listening, feel free to get in touch with me at guardshackpc@gmail.com if you want to get something set up. So Safe Life Defense has some great products at great prices. In fact, the company I work for recommends Safe Life Defense to everybody that comes on board that wants to get body armor. At the time I recorded this episode, I did some research and found they have body armor for as low as $449 for concealable 3A armor and $549 for concealable 3A plus armor. Now the 3A plus is their own designation, which I'll talk about in just a couple minutes. Now of course they have their concealable flexible rifle armor, which is FRAS, for $1,628. Now you're probably thinking, dang, that's pretty expensive, and you are right. However, that stuff is incredible. While those of us in security generally won't need anything like it, you can still check out their videos they have where they shoot the living crap out of it with a lot of rifle rounds, and it stood up to their test. They also have several carrier options which can change the price, and they've got the concealable carrier, which those prices I listed above, that's what they come with. They also have the Molly or tactical carrier, which comes in with a built-in rescue handle on the back for pulling people out of a can of worms they may have gotten into. They have the uniform looking carrier, which I talked about earlier. They also have the uniform carrier with the lower front having Molly attachments on it. They also have what they call a first responder carrier, which is geared more towards fire and EMS personnel. It's got some admin pouches and other pouches to hold radios or gloves or whatever. They all look very spectacular and very professional. Now let's talk about Safe Life Defense's own designation of Enhanced 3A+. Again, that's their own specific designation. However, that bad boy can take a 30-06 armor-piercing steel core round. It has slash and stab resistance, and they also have level 3 plates that you can slide into. Another thing that Safe Life Defense offers is quad pay on most of their items. And what quad pay does is it breaks down your total into 4 equal payments, or really close to being equal payments. The first of which is due the day you submit your order. Every 2 weeks after that, they charge a card for a payment until the cost is paid off. Generally, if it's in stock, they'll ship it right away though. Again, I'm not sponsored by QuadPay, I just think it's a great option. Now they also have a slew of many other items such as patches, stickers, t-shirts, what have you. But they also have that duty belt that I was talking about. It's very sturdy. You've seen the tests probably on your Facebook or on YouTube on their ads where they're jumping up and standing on that thing. And I have an officer that works for us, and he's got it, and he has no complaints about that thing whatsoever compared to other ones. Now, I actually have one of their vests on order, and when it comes in, I'll give you guys the lowdown on it. The reason it's not in yet is because my size is back ordered right now, just like a lot of them are, but it should ship within the next 3 to 4 weeks, probably sooner. Now, their sizing is a little bit different from what I'm sure you're used to. They have their own sizing chart for vests and offer a 30-day fit guarantee. You can check the chart on their website for an idea of what size you're going to need. If you ever have any questions, you can use the contact us form on their website. I did. They emailed me back in like 30 minutes. It was crazy, really, how fast it was. I dug around on their site when I ordered mine, and I was able to find a good discount plus free shipping. I think I saved close to $150 off of my order. Now, keep in mind, the higher the level of protection, the heavier vest will be and the more rigid it's going to become, and that's going to lead to it being a little bit more uncomfortable, but you're trading off comfortability for safety. They also have some awesome guarantees. On top of that fit guarantee I told you about, they also offer a satisfaction guarantee. So if you don't like it, you can send it back in its original condition for a full refund. They also have what they call an incident guarantee. If their armor saves your life, you send them your armor with the official incident or police report, and they'll replace it at no cost to you. Now, they do have a general warranty of 5 years on the ballistic panels and 2 years on their carriers. We all know that external carriers are going to wear out way quicker than the actual panels themselves. And honestly, I don't know why I have to say this next part. Well, really, I do. But do not test your vest on yourself or on anyone else. Sure, if you want to test it on its own at a range or whatever, you can shoot it, but you need to be prepared to buy another one after that. It is highly discouraged to use or trust ballistic panels or vests or whatever you want to call them when they've been shot, even if only one time. It reduces their ability to be safe. All right, that's all I have for today's episode. I want to say thanks for listening, and please, please, please share us. Our goal here is to help people develop professionally and improve the image of the industry. You can find us on Anchor at anchor.fm/GuardShackPC. You can also find us currently on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Breaker, Podbean, and soon on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, maybe even some more, who knows. You can give us a follow or a subscription or however you want to call it if you don't mind. We're going to be on YouTube. I'm going to start posting snippets and full episodes on there. And I do not, for some reason, have that address in front of me. It's not a custom address yet, but just Google the Guard Shack. The profile picture is going to be the same as the artwork for the podcast. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/GuardShackPC and on Instagram at instagram.com/GuardShackPC. You can write us at guardshackpc@gmail.com. You can send your suggestions or comments and let us know what you want to hear about on upcoming podcasts. As always, thanks for listening and stay safe out there.